Alright, so we're gonna have a look at Tomahawk's main tank video. This was taken from Nepal, so he played all three main tanks. First Winston, then Reinhardt, then Orisa, and a bit of Winston in the last round, so it can be handy for every main tank, essentially. It was taken from scrims, so it's got a bit more team play, communication and coordination and all that, and a bit better in terms of team comps, but it's still from his own POV, so it's not like a bird eye view, it's still Tomahawk's own POV. Okay.
I think they're doom ghosting.
Yeah, okay. So we can't see their comp yet, Tomahawk is expecting something. But just looking at you guys' zone comp, got pretty standard support duo these days, which is good in many styles of compositions.
It doesn't work for me, fuck my life.
It still doesn't work?
No, for me that doesn't. Oh no, it does.
Better, okay.
I think, yeah, yeah.
No, perfect. But yeah, we've got quite a disruptive DPS duo. Doomers and Slumber are pretty popular these days, especially against goat style compositions, but it can also work in dive. And then, of course, with mobile tanks, mobile DPS, those two stick together. So we've got pretty standard tank duo here. The initial push we're taking here, up top this side of the ramp. Let me quickly find it. Yeah, let's hear. So taking, you guys are like kind of taking around this side, which is okay, but do mind. The enemy can now have quite an easy time in holding off at a certain angle. So if they all stand around here, then you'll have to come facing frontward, like funnel into them. What I usually did when I was playing Winston on this map is that I would, if I take another angle, I would kind of take the center and the elephant statues. Because then, if you're, let's say, one person set up around here, one person set up around here, and then one person set up around here, and then maybe even one DPS on the flank, it's going to be much harder for an enemy deathball, because you're expecting some sort of goats comp to really have you all in one direction, because the strength that you guys have with your mobility is that you can take multiple angles, which, if you're expecting their goats comp, they can't. So initially I would look to not funnel in if you're playing Winston D.Va, just because you don't know what the enemy is running. I would try to stay split a bit and have different angles.
And that point, Ryan, Winston.
Okay, so you see Reinhardt, Winston, D.Va. So it's not full goats, but it's at least triple tank.
Winston, D.Va, goats, yeah.
See their Ana, they have an Ana. We're gonna dive their Ana.
I'm gonna try.
Diving the Ana in general is a good picker, just because, like, if the Ana is that they can never really sustain the free tanks that they have. One thing that you can always keep in mind, though, is that they're playing a solo DPS, and whenever there's like a solo role of something, it's something they can exploit quite easily. So let's say some teams run a solo tank, Winston commonly, and then they don't have a D.Va. That means you can focus the Winston a lot more effectively because he doesn't have Matrix. In the same way, a Reinhardt that doesn't have a Zaryak really has to step back on his aggression, and in the same way, solo support doesn't have a lot of peel, not a lot of protection, and if you kill that, you can commonly kill the rest of this team. So in many compositions, if they have like a solo role of something, in this case a solo DPS Genji, you can try to look for a way to exploit it, because the thing is, Genji's a pretty decent DPS, especially he's making a return now, but he does require quite a lot of babysitting. Like, he needs follow up on his dashes, on his shurikens and all that. He needs a lot of space created for him. He doesn't really have as much autonomy or self-sustain, so he's going to need healing and space creation and follow up. So this Genji will need some babysitting from their end, which means that you guys could exploit it, but going for the Ana is also a fine one.
On me, bad.
Now we kind of see, let me rewind it just a few seconds. Nice forehead. So as you guys are going in,
We're gonna dive their Ana.
I'm gonna try.
you can see you guys are all on the same side, so the enemy team can basically like hold this angle here, and then around this rep mark, and they can basically hold most of the team in their view. So that's why I would like for people to take like the elephant statue and maybe go for a different flank, just because it makes it harder for them to really get value out of their stationary comp.
On me.
Wait, you get the dive in the Ana and the grenade, that's nice.
Behind.
Ryan's off point.
Hacking again is a good call.
Below.
Trade 1 for 1.
1v1, main.
Good focus.
Genji on the Mega.
This is good, not committing abilities but still pressuring Genji. That's like the best way they can deal with Genji in this comp is by pressuring him without using abilities, which is what you did here, which is really good.
Genji 1 on point.
You did lose your own Ana though, I think, yeah. And you lost your Sombra, okay? It's kind of an even fight, but it's pretty risky anyways because you don't really have a lot of healing. That's why this jump is a bit risky if we rewind here.
Genji 1 on point.
Because you don't have like any backup, you're basically jumping into 3 people and you're with 1 only. So you're going to take some damage, and especially with D.Va, if she doesn't have her abilities, what you want to do is that you don't want to land in front of her with her inside your bubble. You want to have your bubble break the line of sight with D.Va, and then you want to be able to dance around it, because in this case, as you can see, the enemy D.Va still has abilities and still is in your bubble, so she's damaging you. And then because you get knocked back, you get damaged again. And ideally, if you play her on the edge of your bubble, it will make it so that she can't do damage initially, so she has to commit her shift, and then you can use the knockback to go back to the other end of your bubble, so you can take less damage. So if you're facing a D.Va with Winston, What you want to try to do here is play around the edge of your bubble and don't make her walk inside your bubble and deal damage to you without using at least a cooldown. Because you could have maybe prevented a lot of damage here.
I got him. Nice. D.Va.
Going back to mid was fine because your Ana was about to respawn. One thing I do want to highlight here though, you seemed a bit indecisive. Like, you get some kills, you take some damage, walk around. I don't know if you agree with that, Samok. Like, were you sure what to do at this moment? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was waiting for the Ana to come back main, so I was just kind of like.
You've gotta hide for a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing they can always do if you want to do that, whoop. Jump around this side. If it's a level line of sight, you instantly have like a wall and the little staircase you have to take cover by. If you're trying to escape.
D.Va.
You do get the kill. Sorry, I'm fully the tanks.
D.Va hack. Good. Ryan.
Nice cleanup.
I made your strike.
Nice.
I want them.
Okay, so you do manage to clean up the fight.
Stay with me in the back.
I got him. That's fine. Just go point.
Enemy team is swapping now. They have a Zarya instead of Winston, and they have a Brig instead of Reinhardt. And we will see that they will eventually swap to a more standard comp. Enemy team is running a very awkward comp right now because they're still running solo DPS and they just swap their Ana to a Moira, so the Nanoblade combo is gone. So the enemy team will switch later, but just remember that this composition that they're running is not very standard. It doesn't work out too well for them. It's a bit awkward of a composition. It doesn't really commonly work as well.
Yeah, they have no Ana.
Someone's sleeping.
But what I would do now, Tomahawk, seeing as they have quite a few stationary targets without a lot of high ground control, so Moira can't really take high ground, neither can Zarya, neither can Brig. So what I would like you to do, basically when you win a team fight on this map with Dive, is that the tanks, or at least one of them with a DPS, will start to camp around here. It makes it so they can't push up top for free, and it also makes it you can drop on them from above, or maybe even post a hit scan up top there, and just get some free damage without them really being able to contest you, because as you can see, there's about 3 targets in the enemy team that will probably never reach high ground. So you can always get some free damage and get some free drops.
He's main.
For Div Bomb in, got a nice kill.
Genji low right side.
Okay, some ults get thrown.
Nice. I'm gonna. But they're all right.
Quite a lot of ults invested here. So you guys have used Beat Drop and Nano and Div Bomb. Okay, I want to rewind this entire fight for a bit. So you're calling to go for the Genji after the bomb?
I must have.
Okay. Yeah, they have no Ana.
Someone's sleeping.
We can dive their Genji eventually.
Diving the Genji, like I said, is good because they have solo DPS. But one of the things I really notice here, if you go a couple steps back, is you're kind of not really putting pressure. So you get the Diva Bomb in, and by this time you can already, maybe if you throw the Diva Bomb in, you're going to have a lot of space already. So if you're literally initiating with a Diva Bomb, then you can already push up a bit and take some space because the enemy has to go back. And if you did that, you might have been able to be around this pillar by the time you would have gotten your Nano Boost. And in that case, the Genji would not have been able to dash out with you being on a cooldown. That could have been a bit more effective.
Genji low right side.
And you do decide to commit onto him.
Nice.
This is good.
I'm gonna.
Seeing as you got some kills, I would instantly jump back into the fray. I would have jumped right about here.
Nice. I'm gonna. But they're all right.
Now on this, there's a couple interesting things now. The Moira can heal whoever's being like bullied here a bit, and on top of that, the Zarya can get grav charge. So what you want to do, basically, if you're in a cleanup situation, because you got 3 kills and they only got 1 on curl, what you want to do is just drop your bubble because you basically won this fight, and if you can drop your bubble so to make sure that she doesn't get healing and that the Zarya doesn't get grav charge, you just have like a bit better of an ultimate economy. You just take a bit less unnecessary poke. Yeah, you do end up cleaning this here and it's fine. Now I'm curious to see if you'll take the high ground. Okay, now the enemy has a Reinhardt instead of a Zarya.
Yeah.
No more D.Va.
We'll stick with Genji because if they
Okay, so they swapped a lot of things.
I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
If they blade can you
I'm gonna eat you when they do.
Okay, so self bubbles out.
Go on the
Genji's seeing
Genji.
you.
Oh no, Lisa point.
Okay.
Nice.
Nice grenade there. I'm gonna watch this play out a bit, but this was interesting.
More.
Let's see when you use your ult. Perfect timing to ammo and low HP. Nice ulti there. It's an interesting fight again. I have to rewind this at the end again.
Sorry,
Okay, you missed your jump a tiny bit, but that's just small mechanics.
I can only hear monkey one gun.
It's nice.
Okay, man.
Okay, you get some things in. This fight is still going on.
Low main. Low main. Look who's one on the mega.
There, left side, there, right there.
Lucia high.
This is winnable.
Okay, so now, seeing as you're dead now, I kind of want to rewind the fight because there was a lot of things going on both sides. I think we're about here, yeah. Okay, so you take the high ground, that's fine. They make a bunch of swaps and they still have Genji Blade.
Genji can get that one trick.
You decide to use EMP for their blade, which is fine.
The blade can need.
I'm gonna EMP when they
Now let's look at some things. The Moira user or open the Zarya use self bubble. So there's several things you can do here. Of course, you want to look to stay away from Brig, but you can always help him, like keeping the Genji at bay. But you can also somewhat focus the Moira, or you can split the Zarya off from a Moira and start focusing her. Those would be like your most legitimate options here, mostly because she has used one cooldown and as such can protect herself. She has used her orb, so she can't really heal targets effectively. Like, if you put a bubble over her, then she has to get out of the bubble and probably use shift as well, or you can focus her down because she doesn't have self-healing. And same thing, Genji is still quite exploitable because he's solo DPS.
Okay, go for it. Alright, not personal.
But you're a bit later because the enemy's already got presence on point, and then when the Genji starts poking you, you don't really want to jump into this because he still has cooldowns. If you're playing like the Winston Genji matchup is all about like who can force out the enemy's movement ability first, and that person usually wins.
Oh no, no,
does better. Because now you're like, you went for the Genji and then like, oh shit, this is not really an ideal duel.
Nice!
And then you kind of just get like a clutch anti-nade, which is really good on the enemy Reinhardt and Brick, which allows you to focus an efficient target, but it would have been really rough if that clutch nade didn't land.
Nice.
The EMP in.
More.
Focusing more is good.
Yeah, get the Genji.
That's good. So now there's some interesting things. The Genji died and the Brick died. But they still have a very stationary comp. I can understand that you would want to commit onto these like squishy targets here, but what you can always do as well is jump back and forth. So if I put on the map again, what I like to do against stationary comps is split them up because they're a Reinhardt, Zarya, and Moira. If they're like really far apart, it's never good for them. So I'm gonna indicate you with blue cross. Let's say you're like Primal Raging around here. What you can do is just if the enemy, I think it's the Lucian Moira you're attacking, you can just boop them backwards like whoop, and then you can instantly turn around and just go back to point where the Reinhardt Zarya is, and then you can bloop and boop them away as well, because that means you're booping them into your team when you already have like a man up advantage, so they're not really going to lose those duels. And on top of that, it just splits their comp up entirely, which is what they're really weak at with Reinhardt Zarya. So you make sure their healers can't really heal their team effectively, and then you split up their two tanks into the focus fire of your team. That's one of the things that you could opt to do here. Instead, what you did is that you kind of have to fight around all these cooldowns, because then Lucio amps, maybe the Moira orb comes in, shift comes in, Zarya team bubble was just used. So it's sometimes a bit hard to get the Primal Rage like kill confirmation by yourself, but you can always help by just displacing people and moving them to a more favorable position. Like if you can actually confirm a kill with Primal Rage is all fine, but by the time things start looking nasty, you want to look to split the team up. Because now you actually like boop the Moira into their deathball again, which is where they're strong at. This is good though, like now you're really displacing him. This last boop was really nice. Because he's got no backup from his team now, and there's like 3 people around there. So now you get directly really good focus firing. Okay, then you can see 9. It's a lot of cooldowns online still. So what are the things you can do if you're not in range and you like the thing is they have Lucio, and so you can't really chase them down effectively. Just reload, like it's downtime what you're doing right now. Because you only have 67 ammo when you go in. And in this type of downtime, even if you can't deal damage or really block damage and whatnot, you can always at least reload. Like it's very unhandy as Winston to have to reload mid-fight, especially if a target has mobility like increased roll here. So if you're not really, if you don't really have any damage to block, you have no jump to make, and you have no ult to use and no damage to deal, just start to reload and get ready for the next jump. Because with a tiny bit of more ammo, you would have had this.
Lucia high.
Eventually you get the follow from Susie, but you might have been able to do it without dying. So you did kind of lose the point there. Things are just starting to get messy. It's a very elongated team fight.
Okay, Rigger.
There's a hack left side.
The fight's too long, they're getting all the points. Yeah, Rigger.
It's kind of okay, just regrouping.
They have a McCree now. Do I switch?
No? Oh, yeah.
Genji or what?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so you go for a Genji.
And we can just dive there McCree here.
Because now the enemy comp is a bit more standard. Reinhardt, Zarya, Moira, Lucio is all fine. DPS duo is a bit awkward, you don't really see that a lot, but I guess it's better than, or more standard than what they had before. You still have a pretty decent solid dive comp.
Up left.
I'm just expecting you to play around the Nano Blade now. Which is pretty smart because you only really need to win one fight and then just hold off the last stragglers. So.
He's left side right now.
But yeah, once again we go like up top here, which means we'll all funnel into their damage. So the Reinhardt can just put his shield up and fire, and let them creep fire from here, even though he's not behind the shield. But taking different angles once again might be beneficial to your team.
3, 2, 1.
And then we get the same problem as we got on your guys' first attack. And on the first attack it kind of worked out because you get the clutch anti-nade off. But as you can see here, because you're all like facing the same direction, they can all just like follow the same direction backwards and run away from it.
On 3, 2, 1.
So as you can see, he just like pedals back. Lucio is around here, pedals back, and then the Moira can also heal him. Then as you can see, he's speed amped. You don't have to speed, so you're gonna run out of range at some point, and you're just gonna stand into the open.
Behind us.
Nice, Reinhardt.
So in this case, it was kind of the grab that swung the fight for you. But either way, the engagement wasn't really ideal because they could just keep their distance from you because you were all facing the same direction. And this might be like a bit of team advice in general, but as a main tank you can also recognize this because you'll be the spear of your engagement, like you can dictate where you go.
They use grab there, they maybe have beat, right? Beat shatter.
Alright, let's go EMP bomb, alright?
EMP bomb is also a good combo, yeah.
I'm gonna come up and Lisa, you should stay with me. I'm there. Come back up.
They still some high ground. Could maybe dodge the 5-strike, but nothing too big.
Bomb whenever.
It's a good setup. Nice initiation.
Ryan.
Ryan hacks again.
Okay, get the beat drop. I was about to say you can't Primal Rage here just because you're about to clean up this fight.
I think I knew that Josh was on the stairs, so I kind of didn't move. Like I saw him and I saw him hit with a nade, so I was like, okay, I probably don't need a primal here.
Yeah.
McCree here.
The McCree situation was risky, but the Matrix was on point.
Lucio hacked.
Unlucky about the jump.
Nice.
Okay, you end up cleaning this fight up.
First on the back.
This last fight was maybe a bit much because they are 99 you're not. Okay, can't really kill with Zarya, that's unlucky. Let's see here. Because this was by the time you got beat dropped. If the jump distance is really short like this, don't be afraid to walk up to him. Like if you just walk up to him and then Primal Rage, because this distance is really short. I'm not sure if you could have made this jump with like pressing S and then jumping. If you could have made it any shorter, you might have just like always overflung it. But if you're in this type of situation, it's not too bad to just Primal Rage, because Primal Rage's got a decent range, I think like 6 meters or something as well. And if you like rotate your camera, similar to what you do with Reinhardt, you get the same mechanic where you rotate the peak of your hitbox, and you can always boop them away. And also, if you walk, seeing as you have like such a short distance to jump, it's very hard to be very precise here. So if you walk, you can always like take a bit of an angle and knock him, say, that way, like away from the point. In this case, it was a clutch matrix that maybe helped you out a lot.
McCree here.
But yeah, this is good juggling on the McCree. He's just not going to go anywhere. Now focusing on Trace is fine because she was 1 HP. Worth the focus.
Nice. First on the back.
Oh shit, boys, I'm stuck.
Point.
Nice.
Zarya,
Can't really kill Zarya. Yeah, this is fine. Just
go back.
dealing some free damage from bubble, that's all good.
Back. They're all there.
Oh, that wasn't last fight. Oh, my bad.
They use shadow.
I'll try and hack Zarya.
They have a... What is it, soldier?
They
have more ult and pulse bomb. Go ahead, soldier. Oh no,
Morris hack.
This is really good. Nice nice hack and nice anti on the Moira.
Nice, good shit. Hello.
Nice.
Okay, you're getting this clutch, you're getting kettled out for heals. Really nice heals from him.
Zarya. And Tracer right side. Nice, guys.
So, what's it called? Despite that Tomahawk needed like a lot of healing in this fight, I think it was all fine. Simply because the way they're set up. They're all real close quarters, they have a lot of poke in Tracer and Soldier. And seeing as the Moira was hacked and anti, you had to commit onto this, like this just swings the entire fight. So taking this hard engagement is fine, even though it might demand a lot of heals from your team. But, basically, what you did, you killed their only real ultimate in the game right now, in the last fight. And on top of that, you already visited Ana Grenade and Moira and Sombra Hack. So like those are 2 very vital cooldowns, so I can understand if you want to follow up on this. So even if it seems like he might need a lot of pocket from his team, it's really fine in this situation because he does get the follow-up on the one and only ultimate that the enemy has.
Nice.
Yeah, then we just see this play out. You just take some cover and you get healed.
Run.
Genji, sorry.
It was close, but you still made it, so I'm not going to fault you on that. You always have those close moments.
Nice, guys.
A nice follow-up. Okay, so close first round on Winston. So yeah, main things on Winston here. This kind of goes for your team, but you can definitely as a main tank help in this, because like I said, you dictate the engagement. Take different angles if you're playing Winston Diva. So let's say if the enemy's playing dive, then you still have like your split angles, and you can still go for things, but if they're playing deathball, you need to have the split angles. So like taking the split angles, it can kind of work in almost every situation, whereas the route that you guys went for, it can only work if the enemy is not running deathball, which is what they did have. And in the first fight, you kind of won it because you had like a good Ana nade, and then you started messing up their triple tank with Doom for Sombra, which is kind of compositional things as well. And then at some point you get grabbed as well, so it maybe doesn't seem as obvious that it's not ideal, because the only time you got punished for is when you all got grabbed, which doesn't seem like too big a deal, but it is something that you need to keep in mind. Besides that, some small general tips. What I did like, and this just comes from scrim experience, that you were quite decisive. Like with many main tanks that just start scrimming, is that they're always quite passive and quite slow in their engagements, but the pace here was good, so that's nice. Other than that, it's just more like small mechanical or individual tips. Now we're gonna go on to the next map, which is Village. Affirmative.
Or Ana? For the anti-step.
Whatever you come with.
So let's see what you guys will run.
Run Messi, the phone.
Nah.
Didn't run Messi.
Okay, so you're running instant composition. You're running Fire without a Mercy. What you could have opted to do here is have Nico literally just speed amp you out of the gate and then swap to Mercy and spawn and then fly to the closest target. That could have always worked. The rest of the comp is pretty decent. It's more common to see goats here, but if you're going for long range damage, having these two DPS is fine. I don't know what you're expecting from them here, but if they're running goats, the Ana's perfectly fine, and then you can have the Mercy Fraction damage amp. That's what I would have done, but it also can kind of work.
The main.
Just some scouting, it's all fine.
I'm gonna flank and
They're ghosting.
Flank and
They have a
nade.
Reaper.
I'm gonna tank them run now.
Okay, so you saw basically goats here and Reaper. That means they're definitely gonna fight on point. They have to play it defensively because they have more tank resources and more anti-tank resources than you have.
Nading. Big nade.
So taking this close engagement is kind of risky because if you're playing, basically your Ana and your Pharah are flanking around, right? So they need like a couple extra seconds before they're really in position. And on top of that, the point is only going to unlock in 8 seconds, and then it still has to make up like the progress meter, right? It still has to go all the way. So if you're playing in this style of composition, you have to wait for your ranged damage to come in, which means your tanks only really have to contest at the last possible moment, and they just mostly have to stall for a long time. Like, you can't really go aggressive against this comp on point, because they're with 6 on point, or maybe with 3 or 4 if you're lucky, and they just have so much more things to mess with you.
Big nade.
Good bubbler. Okay, this is a charge. It ends up working here, but this charge is so hella risky. Because basically, like, if you look at your team, right, your Ana's flanking, but the only one that can really counteract the charge in your team is the Ana with a sleep dart. Your team bubble was already used by the time you had this thing on, so you weren't really going to get protected either. They still had a Zarya bubble online, I think, so they could have bubbled whoever you pinned, they could have brick stunned you, they could have Ana slipped you. So, like I said, they're just running like a much more point-hold stationary comp with a lot of things to mess with the Reinhardt, so charging it in general is just risky. But if you do see an opportunity, or you believe you see one, then try to keep in mind what cooldowns can really mess with you, because they have 3 and you only have 1 that can possibly mess up a pin.
Big nade.
So yeah, this bubble is used. Now you do get kind of like the clutch pin, and you do manage to get the kill with Fume, but look at your HP. Your HP is instantly down to 30. And if like Reaper's pellets, it's got like random spread and random like amount of pellets. If their leash hits 1 headshot on you, you're dead now. Like, that's how clutch and close you are. And you're 16 HP. So they do end up winning this fight. Watch the cleanup.
Oh, I missed it.
Ana.
Push him.
Ana next, Ana.
This is good. Charge is okay, just close the distance.
Now Reaper push.
Oh, I got it.
The second charge is kind of okay, even though it didn't hit anything, because it kind of split them apart and it kind of just made you closer to it. But I want to rewind this fight again, because there was quite a few things going on.
I'm gonna tank.
So your Ana's flanking and your Pharah's flanking.
I'm ready for nade. I can nade whenever.
You see you drop, okay, it's kind of okay.
Nading.
But then this is interesting. You take some damage, you get the swing on both, that's okay. But what I would want you to do with this Reaper, you got bubble, which is maybe a second off. I would have maybe liked it a bit sooner. But once you're playing against Reaper, you want to really bait the aggression onto you, because you always have a range damage advantage if you're playing against a Reaper, right? So as long as you can basically force him to shoot at your shield rather than at your team, it's like a win-win basically, because you do get more damage in, you get more relevant damage in, and if you can manage to stay alive, the Reaper can't really do much as long as you're just blocking it with your shield. So what I would be considering to be more favorable, like getting the first swing and 5-strike is okay, but then I would try to cut attention from the Reaper by kind of taking a step closer, and then doing the standard shield mechanic. So you jump backwards, you flick downwards, because Reaper will try to
put his gun through, yeah. Yeah,
and we'll try to barrel stuff you, and then having the shield angle to the ground will make it so it's harder for him to hit you, and then you can just try to jump constantly and make it hard for him to get an angle. It will force a lot of time off of him, and in the meantime your range damage should come in. That's it. You get the pin, and with some very clutch healing and whatnot, you get the kills. But then things are getting interesting again. You send this fire strike. It's kind of unlucky that you just jump back. I would try to work a bit on getting those things right, because against their comp, the Zarya bubble is the only thing that will like allow you to go in aggressively. And when you get it, you kind of like just only use it like to get walk back. Like you were already walking back and you jumped, so you couldn't really change the momentum. But it's something that I would look to coordinate better with.
Anna next, Anna.
This clip is all fine. You get a good fire strike. You'll go to shatter.
I
All the damage comes in. Nice.
I vault.
So now you're in a really significant advantage, because the enemy's effective range is a Zarya beam, and your spam damage can come in like so effectively right now that you should be able to hold them off quite effectively, unless they swap.
Oh, but yeah, high ground. I've been top left. Okay.
Good sonic arrow, always handy to get some feedback.
They're coming main. They're main.
Nice, you got some damage in.
Might be baiting. They're main.
Main. One bubble used.
Nice.
Okay, this is all kind of fine, but I will get into position indeed to start contesting. You get 2 kills is really good.
Just push them now. Reinhardt.
Nice, that runs a free kill.
Break.
Okay, so the enemy team has decided, did decide to swap some things. They swapped the Reaper for McCree. Does leave him with one thing though. He has to win this duel, and he has to not get killed by this one. So once again, what I really like that you guys are doing here is that you're kind of exploiting their solo DPS McCree, because he has to worry about 2 duels right now. In this case, you just get the damage in, and then it's just clean up time.
I'm gonna hide in the corner and sneak the run when he comes in the shadow.
Top left.
Top left. Oh, I'm not there.
Rise out shots.
Kind of peeking here is fine, but I wouldn't commit into this hallway.
They're actually going top.
Okay, it's just that he doesn't have shatter, but when that brick walks up to you like that, it's 100% guaranteed she's gonna stun you. Okay, unlucky that you missed that.
I'm the wrong person.
Nice, we win. We're equal.
Nice. See you guys clean this fight. Nice pick.
Nice. Anna.
No, right one.
Nice. I'm dead, so I don't know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, this fight was a bit awkward. You get the kills, nice. Mainly because your Anna wasn't with you, because you wanted to go. She was expecting people to go main, and then you wanted to sleep and shatter.
I'll shatter this, and then we should stay able to.
And so lucky the nano boost missed as well.
They're actually going top.
See how this plays out. In hindsight, you could have maybe opted to what's it called? The shatter as the bubble expires, because most people what they'll do is that they will complete the second swing by the time the Zarya bubble expires, and then you have like a small bit of time where you can get the shatter in. And because you also they're going top, the one thing they're gonna do is just all walk around here. So by the time your shuttle actually land the projectiles, they're all gonna be in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so things get used. I understand you're passive here and defensive, so you get so much anti-things. But by that time they're already here, they've already like gotten their space, so it's a bit rough.
And then we should stay able to.
They're actually going top.
Yeah.
And also one thing, is like how should I put this? What many teams do if they have like a Brig and a Lucio is that they start isolating a certain target, and then that person will probably try to panic ult a bit, and this is like a classic example of it. So the Brig stuns you, Lucio, oh, it's a couple seconds too much.
Yeah.
So they walk up, they speed on you, so Brig stuns you, then they're all like kind of moving around you right now. So like the nade comes in, but the bubble helps you, and then you have like all these people around you, and then for many people it will be very intuitive to start ulting, and in this case it's Reinhardt or Tomahawk on Reinhardt with the Earth Shatter, so a lot of teams will start using defensive abilities, but this can be anyone. A lot of Zaryas will try to grab here, a lot of Maze will try to ult here, all that type of stuff. So once you see this type of thing happening, you realize that they're trying to isolate a certain target, and that they'll always have like a defensive ability ready to mess with your ultimate, because in this case, they could have maybe had Sleep, they had Rein's shield, Brick still had a shield, so it's going to be very rough to actually land your Shadow. And in this case, you kind of got mind-gamed in a sense.
Oh, not the wrong person.
Nice, we win, we're equal. Nice, one up. Nice, two up. Anna.
No, right one.
I know, nice. I'm dead, so I don't know. Nice.
Oh, nice. Nice, good.
But you do end up cleaning the fight up, and you get the break out of the way, which is really good.
Yeah.
And now it should be cleanup time, because you still have Graph combo in the last fight.
Main, I'd say. Can't go
Top
anywhere
left,
else.
top left.
Okay.
Ready when they're
I charge him.
This is good, because it literally just makes it so he can't touch. He has to commit onto the counter charge, which means he's either gonna like get prone on the ground here without touching, or he's gonna get pinned. His call.
Nice.
Either way, it's good for you guys. So you do manage to clean up there.
Though. Well, it was a good round.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's look at some things. Against the Reaper comp, I would definitely what's it called? I would advise you to play a lot more defensively, because you did get like the clutch kill in this case, but yeah, you were at 16 or 13 HP at some point, and you basically got 270 damage in one shot, so you can see how risky it could be. It could have gone horribly bad as well. The beginning had like a few unlucky moments where your Zarya bubble came on a bit early, and then like you could have maybe not aggressed at the one moment when you have Zarya bubble, you're walking back and you got Zarya bubble. And the other main thing was, like I said, at the end when they start mind gaming you, it's a lot of Goats comp or like triple support variations. What they start to do is that they start to isolate a certain target that they can speed on and then stun. And for many players, it's like that's their ultimate like panic button to press Q, really. Like I said, in this case it happened to you, but it could have happened to Zarya, and then she might have panic graphed, and then if there's a D.Va online, she'll have Matrix and all that. So try to remember that. When a triple tank, or not even triple tank, just like when a triple support with Brig starts running at you, they want to isolate you, and it's going to be very hard for you to use your ultimate, and you can only really do it when their resources have actually expired, so like when D.Va Matrix is completely gone, when the Brig shield's gone, all that. Then we're going to go into the last round. Hoop.
Yeah.
Nice camera work.
Hmm.
Okay, so we're running with...
G.
Okay, you're running double sniper. Yeah, this is pretty standard composition for this map. You do opt to run it with the Hog here. It's not something that I commonly did. I usually ran it with D.Va, but it can work with Hog. What you need to remember though, we usually play it with D.Va like I said. If you're playing with D.Va, you have a couple advantages. You should win a shield war, simply because D.Va adds like the little bit of extra matrix, so you can actually like have a bit more shielding effectively, and she adds a fair amount of shield break. D.Va is also commonly a bit stronger in the ultimate game, because you can pull people into a D.Va bomb and get some kills, and you can like stall and remake and all that good stuff. Thing is with Hog though, she has more mid-fight value, or Hog has more mid-fight if you could just get like if you get a really good hook and pull combo. And one thing to always remember as well, because you have no extra shield, any flank onto you is very hard to protect yourself from, because if you're playing with D.Va, you can just matrix the other side and cover the flank. And one thing is very specific for Sanctum, which is one of the few maps where these combos are run. So what a lot of teams will do, if they're playing with Orisa D.Va, is that they'll start kind of around the corner here, so they have like some high ground presence, and then they can always use Matrix when you pass through the point. So on this arrow line, you can call for Matrix for 2 seconds and set up on point with a new shield. If you're playing with Hog, you have to instantly commit on being closer to the point already, because you can't really, if you're standing here, you can't really make this turnaround without any shielding, without probably losing someone to either an environmental pull or a headshot or some sort. So if you're playing this with Hog, you have to immediately play closer to the point, because you can't really contest high grounds or different angles as effectively. So let's see how you guys play it out.
We were completely poked at this stage.
So what we
It's
got?
almost mirror compositions from both teams. Only
Yeah, no, we
they do have Lucian and Ana though, but they have very similar win conditions. It's a lot of poke and
I
range
don't know.
damage.
Okay, this
Can go straight to 24.
okay, straight point.
Okay, straight to point.
Yeah, they have two.
So one thing that you need to keep in mind is Orisa. She's very like reliant on ability rotations, and if you're literally forced to use your shift quite early, and you still have to use your shield, you're in a bit of a predicament, because you can't really push aggressively or catch aggression. Going for the halt is fine, but you always want to halt the ground here first, or sorry, shield the ground here first, and then you can animation cancel with your right click. In this case, you're already forced to use 2 of your abilities and your shield, and now you're finally on point. But like I said, you have no abilities online now, so it's going to be very rough for you to either make a play or to catch aggression.
Never would have
Look low, right side.
Yes, you'll lose, as I said, this is kind of what happens if you run Roadhog. You can't matrix the pull, so you have to either shield it or just like completely work around it. And then you get hooked as well, because you didn't have any cooldowns. You couldn't shield up, again you didn't have shift yet. And then eventually you get like, this damage, but you've lost both tanks, it's looking pretty rough. So first tip there, always try to shield up first, because shield is actually your least relevant cooldown. Shield is your normal ability basically. Halt your playmaker, if you will. I'm gonna write a P here. Whoop. And then you have shift, which is like your get out of jail free card. If anyone ever speeds onto you and you need to get the hell out of dodge, you shift.
Nice. Go point.
Push low.
Good kills by Fiend, but you already lost like your complete tank line, so it's pretty rough. Okay, taking some angles is fine.
Issue one.
Okay, Fiend lives. Get some kills.
Orisa one.
Okay, so you rush onto it, that's fine. Against Orisa, I would always aim for headshots, because she's never going to work around you. And her hitbox is so big that it's very reliable to hit headshots on her. This is good.
Oh shit,
Instantly shield up, nice. Okay, so one thing I would recommend here, if you're playing against Widows, you have to always play really close together. So I would put my shield basically where the Hawk kind of died.
Oh shit,
like pushing this far forward opens up your team for damage, including you. So I would have maybe shielded a bit further backwards.
I think Anna's still left side.
On top of that, as you can see, in this case you're running Lucio. Because your distance to this corner is so short, it's very easy for them to just walk through your shield with speed down. So you really want to keep your distance to like set up your shield around here. Okay, so you used your Hanzo ult already, which means I can't see you guys use a Hanzo and Orisa Halt combo. Let's see if we see it later in the match.
I haven't been alive for longer than 10 seconds.
This is all kind of fine, just rotating to point.
Do I hold point, yes.
Yeah, you always hold point with your composition, simply because your snipers are better at range, they can't hold as close as here. And what the thing is, like, if you want to push up really aggressively, it's really hard to deal with your comp, because Orisa is not good for making aggressive plays, Roadhog is not as good as he used to be, definitely, and you have double snipers, so you can't really push aggressively, so just holding point is fine. Spamming shields, you have to use shift here. Yeah, it's okay. Can you shield up again? Yeah, they have bongos. It's very much worth your time to focus bongos. Such a swing factor. Because the enemy also didn't have a shield up, so he could have just used it. So I think you activate this manually. Seeing as they don't have a diva, all your holds are free as long as there's no shield. So if you rewind here, you lose here. They didn't have shield. You turn around, and they have shield. So that means they don't have a shield on cooldown right now. If you want to hold people, fire it against the wall, because it will automatically drag people like into the environmental pit, and you want to drag, you want to like also aim it a bit downwards so they don't end up just on the ledge. You really want to drag them down. And seeing as they didn't have Diva and they didn't have an Orisa shield on cooldown, if you would have fired it like into the wall, just a bit downwards, they would have all been pulled in, and you have had like 3 pulls maybe.
Nice.
What? Oh,
shit.
That's also one of the main reasons why I usually played this map with Orisa Diva, is because you get matrix holds. Okay, but we're gonna have a new Dragon ult online soon.
Okay,
I'm building ults, great.
So one thing I really noticed is that you haven't really managed to get a successful halt hook combo, which should have been a possibility because you guys basically have mirror comp, but you have more damage in your damage amp and in your range damage defend than they do. So one of the things you could have always done is just set up on point, spam shields, and then either halt over the shield or just wait until the shield breaks, because they have nothing to mitigate a halt.
Argyll?
Yeah?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
If Diva matrixes halt, does it activate or does it disappear?
It does. It disappears.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I've
I
seen
made it.
things happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not dead.
But it's really weird. Like Orisa holds. I don't know why, but it feels like you always have to hold matrix just a bit longer in order to eat it. So I wouldn't, like, if you're playing Diva, I wouldn't say press right click once in the general direction of the hold. I would literally hold it until it's actually gone, because sometimes you have those weird situations where you seem to matrix the hold, but it doesn't fully disappear. It's kind of odd. Okay. You managed to isolate the Orisa, which is good, but I would have tried to coordinate your Hanzo ult with your Orisa pull. You could have either pulled them all like really close together as the animation goes on, or you could have like if they're all set up behind a shield, you could have just pulled them over, and then the dragon underneath, and then they'll be pulled upwards into the dragon, and they'll fall downwards into the dragon. I've said it before, but if you fire an Orisa ult above someone, it means that they, if they're on the ground, they get pulled linearly into the ult without having any movement abilities really, so they can't escape, and then they'll fall downwards in the same way without having a lot of movement abilities. So if you really want to have like a Riptide or a Hanzo ult to combine with, always go for those vertical pulls, because it just makes it so much easier to get the follow-up.
Nice.
Okay, some nasty things happen. Now you're aiming heads.
I'm res. I'm res. Yeah.
Okay, so you're rezzing, that means you can't aggress anyway.
That's fine.
Okay, so this fight was a bit messy again. End up dying here. So initially, isolating this Orisa was good.
You're not dead.
I'll push him, man.
Yeah, I think you wanted to go for like a bigger pull, but it wasn't really coordinated as well. But you do manage to isolate the Orisa, which is good.
Nice.
But yeah, okay. She gets nano boosted, you protect your team, this is fine.
I'm res.
Okay, so basically now you're about to res, which means you can't really aggress right now. I would literally just wait for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Especially because you just use shift, which I wouldn't really use as aggressively here, because shift is like more of a defensive ability or get out of jail for free card rather than an aggressive playmaking ability. And then you shield up. I would have instantly bonged her really.
That's fine.
Just force the damage in. Instead you get kind of pulled unlucky.
We're still 1 up. 2 up.
And that's also one of the things. You shifted before they ever used hold, so if you had your shift on cooldown you could have just prevented yourself from getting pulled off the map.
Nice, bro. Kill the supercharger. Nice now. Hug.
Oh, nice, dude. He's off. He's one, dude. I almost got him.
So you did use quite a few ultimates, I think. I don't know, your Zeno was maybe his last fight, but you used those 4 effectively. And they used...
Are we holding point or close?
and this one, okay. Very similar ult colonies, a lot of ults used by both teams. Taking this is kind of okay, seeing as you have Hog. But the thing is, she doesn't know that you have a Sonic there. So as soon as you see your move, you know she's gonna peek. I would just literally halt right here and just have your Hog bullet and call it. Because she's never gonna see you coming there, but now she sees there's people looking at her. It's kind of risky again. That's one of the things, like if you shield on this angle, it's like once again very easy to just walk onto her and get their own angle. Yeah, you could have maybe gotten the kill here, but then this suddenly pops up. And as you can see, you're not behind your shield, so this is the damage you take in a fraction of a second. And then you take some more, and then you can't shield down instantly.
I might just swap up Orisa because I'm absolutely nothing. Oh no.
Yeah, it's looking kind of rough.
Yeah, I'm swapping. I'm gonna go Winston.
Last bit of Winston gameplay. Okay, you swap the Deva, that's fine.
Oh shit.
For Russia comp is still kind of okay. You can play double sniper into this.
We can get one more fight.
It's a bit rough to retake with the snipers, but if they have the mechanical skills to get the kills, then it's kind of fine.
Okay. I can dive from you. Ready? 3, 2. Anna right side.
Okay, it's good that you got one for the Ana because she used her grenade.
Anna 1.
Good touch. Can someone touch?
I can.
Nice clutch touch.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
This is all fine, just keeping people busy.
Hard point.
What I would do in 1v1s, especially against tank heroes, literally spam right click as much as you can your melee. My case is right click, because it does a bit more damage in 1v1 duels, not per se in chaining multiple targets, but it can be very handy. I think you can push in 1 melee every 9 bits of ammo, and in a 1v1 it saves you ammo and deals a bit more overall damage.
Nice.
A good swap here on the Hanzo. Good focus on the Discord, that's fine. You could have maybe, I think you're familiar with the mechanic, but whenever you jump, you want to like right click on the target that you're about to land, because it counts the animation of your melee and it deals extra damage. So instead of doing 50 damage with the jump, you do 80 with the melee animation cancel. Okay, you managed to jump out, that's fine.
Nice.
Well played.
Anna main.
1.
And this is why I like the fact that you guys swapped to Winston Deva whilst keeping the snipers. If you get the kills in with the snipers, it's easier to retake, and it's kind of a bit easier to hold as well. Whereas in this comp, you can still put pressure on their tanks when they want to push in, when they want to push up close, and you can peel for your snipers when you need it. Res comes in.
Res.
So doing this is kind of fine, just protecting your team a bit, and they're just regrouping.
Going right, I think.
You can hear the footsteps on the left. It's not right. I managed to live for this. It's unfortunate, I think he just one-tapped you, but I want to replay this again. Initially, what you can always do, it's generally a bit safer to hold the high ground where the Hanzo usually stands. That will be around here, because in that case you always have some high ground, so it's harder for them to hit you and you can get some free damage in. You can always fall back to point instantly without having to use a cooldown whatsoever. So it's a bit safer to just hold that high ground if you're expecting them to come there. And on top of that, listen to footsteps. Left comes closer, left comes closer, and there's the hog.
Left.
The hook just snaps. And I think you just had, it's just a good click by the Roadhog. But could have maybe lived through there if you reacted a bit sooner to their presence.
And a point. We need to touch that.
Hanzo's one.
Lucio 1.
Yeah, this is very rough for a team, like you do get the kills now, but as you can see, Krill couldn't really follow up on any damage and your team didn't really have a lot of protection, so you had to use like the Valkyrie just to maybe like sustain and stay alive. But on top of that, you couldn't really finish up on their kills because you didn't have shield, like you didn't have a shield and they did, so they could just hide. And it's much easier for them to just play behind their shield without any pressure from Winston. Nice. So you do end up winning that.
You guys won that by
So to summarize your Orisa, one thing I would definitely do, despite of like whether or not you're playing with a Hog or a Diva, you always want to shield up first, because shielding is like your most basic ability, and the hold is mostly used for playmaking, I would say, and the shift key is really your get out of jail free card. And if they're really pushing onto you, then you can use both shift and hold defensively. But one of the things I noticed is that you often use shift a bit aggressively, which is very hard to really pull off, because then you have to get the value and you have to actually rush forward, otherwise you're just a sitting duck really. Other than that, I would work a bit more on general positioning, because you want to place your Orisa shield in most cases far away from the enemy. So what you want to do is create as much of a sideline as you can and get some range damage and spam in. So you don't want to push up close with your shield, because they can just rush past it, especially if they have Lucio. And you still want to like sort of bunker up and go into a corner, because Orisa's shield is very like stationary. She doesn't have any mobility and she doesn't have a flexible shield like Reinhardt does. So if you put your shield kind of in the middle somewhere and they decide to flank around it, then you're really caught out. So those things I would keep in mind for the most part. I think those are like most of your Orisa things there. But I think just getting into the habit of shielding up first, getting some damage in, and then looking for a playmaking halt, that could definitely work. And then if that doesn't work and you have to like really push the point, then you can maybe use your shift, or when you're in trouble. Those are like the key Orisa things I would say there. And that is a nice 1 hour tank review I think we have there.
Hug you.
Any questions from your end or not really?
No, oh my god.
Okay, from all the people that are muted, you may unmute of course, but any questions on your end or not really?
No.
Alright.
No fire.
I know Tuxfragger was interested in looking at some tank reviews. Do you have any questions or things that were not clear, or?
No, well, it was quite educational.
Alright, feels good. Right, then I'm gonna stop recording here.
I do have a general question about Ryan, because I tend to play Ryan really aggressively. Should I just not do that in this meta?
Depends on the comp.
Because if I play Ryan nowadays, I just feel like I'm not doing anything.
It really depends on the comp. I'm gonna go back to Villager for this. So let's like comparing the two comps. Let's say this one was in Reaper, right? The McCree. So if you're in like a Goats comp or a Goats variation, the D will be for Diva. Like let's say if you're Dis Reinhardt, right? You're gonna have speed boost. You're gonna have a good Ana pocketing you. You're gonna have Brig healing. You're gonna have Zarya bubbles and Diva Matrix or Reaper really close. So Dis Reinhardt can push much more aggressively, whereas Tomahawk in this case, he only has one Zarya bubble that can dictate his aggression, whereas they have stun and Zarya bubble, and they could have, when they had Reaper, they had a lot more punishing abilities. So it really depends on the comp. What you want to look for is look at the support category. The two supports that enable tanks the most would be Ana and Lucio. So if you're playing with a Mercy or a Zen, you already know you oftentimes have to play a bit more defensively, because they're not really good at healing tanks. They're not really good at synergizing with tanks in terms of like general abilities. So those are things to look out for. Other than that, if you're playing Reinhardt, if one team doesn't have a Zarya, that means the team without a Zarya has to play a lot more of a defensive Reinhardt. So if you're playing Reinhardt Diva, you're gonna have to really play a lot more defensively.
Right.
And if you feel like you're doing nothing, it might just depend on the comp, because there are situations, like these ones here, where all the Reinhardt has to do is to contest point, bait attention onto him, and wait for his range damage to fall in. And that means he doesn't really play aggressively, he literally just shields, buys time, grabs some attention onto himself, and then he has to just hope that his DPS get the job done in time, that he doesn't die in the meantime.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so it's like more recognizing when you are, like if you're the Rein, you have to recognize if you're just being a big target or if when you're actually the one to do damage.
Yeah, so like I can tell you, if you're playing Goats comp against anything that's not a Goats comp, you can commonly push a lot more aggressively.
Yeah, because then you're like this, like you said, like the spare. And
yeah, and there's so much things to help you out. Like, let's say if you're playing Reinhardt against a speed boosted Brig, nano boosted Reinhardt, team bubbled matrixed Reinhardt. Like, have fun dealing with that. Like, you just can't put that many resources into your Reinhardt if you don't have the same comp really. So generally composition is one thing to look out for. Other one is also cooldowns. So let's say that the enemy Ana just used your sleeper and a grenade, and you still have yours online. That means you can push more aggressively.
Yeah.
If they use team bubble and you still have it, that means you can push more aggressively. So it's in part in composition, and the other one is in ability and ultimate rotations. But yeah, I can understand that sometimes you'd feel a bit helpless if you're playing a main tank into like goat style variations.
You're just a punching bag at the end.
Yeah,
main tank.
No, not per se a punching bag. You're like a stall bot.
You're punching bag.
Yeah. I'll give an example.
You have to punch through your tiny wall.
But like sometimes what we did, oh, that's not what I want. Is that sometimes we play Horizon Lunar Colony Defense with Winston Deva, right? What's this map called? Is it Lunar? Yeah, Lunar Colony. So let's say you're playing first point of Horizon. What we would do, like if I'm playing Winston Deva and I'm playing against goats, one tank is gonna enter from like this angle without using a cooldown. They're gonna stall for a couple seconds with double heals, jump back out, wait for the other tank to drop on and contest again. That tank is gonna get a pocket, and in the meantime your other tank will get healed up, and then you just rotate contestants. So if you're playing like against a goat style variation, I hear like Winston Deva, you're just literally buying time, just trying to stall as long as you can without ever dying or fully committing, and then you have to wait for your damage to fall in. So yeah, it can feel sometimes a bit weird to play main tank, but you need to imagine in some compositions all you have to do is hold one foot on the point and just contest for as long as you can without dying.
Okay.
Any other questions or?
I have one that came up.
Yeah, go for it.
When on first fight on village,
yeah,
when the other team still had Reaper, you said something about some shield trick or some Rein mechanic you can use.
So what you want to do with Reinhardt, as you can see, if he's walking up, he walks quite slowly, right?
Yeah.
Whereas what you can do is that if you jump and then shield up in the air, you keep the momentum of your jump, so then you move much quicker, which is always good because you take less damage on a shield. But on top of that, you can create more distance with the enemy Reaper. So what you can do then, like if you would just like walk like Tomahawk is doing right now, just walk with your shield up, the Reaper can easily walk past you and start shooting you. Whereas if you jump, you create a bit more momentum and distance, so it's harder for you to actually land damage on you. And when you, like, as you can see, Tomahawk's shield is now completely flat into the ground. And Reinhardt, it's kind of weird, but he actually holds his shield in front of him, so he doesn't have it directly against his body. There's actually quite a lot of distance between his shield and his actual body. So what heroes like Tracer and Reaper will do is that they'll literally move through your shield, and then if their guns are still like facing your body rather than your shield, then you're still going to take the full blow of damage. And what you can do if you're playing with the jump mechanic is that your shield, I'm going to draw it in the air, it doesn't look entirely like this, a flat line. It's kind of at an angle, so if you look at it from the side, it would look sort of like this, for instance. And then if there's an enemy Reaper that's wanting to shoot you, it's much harder for him to actually push through your shield. So that's how you want to deal with heroes like Reaper, but also to some extent with Tracer and May. They're also like quite commonly trying to push past your shield. You want to jump backwards, shield up in the air, and flick your shield downwards. So in that case, you create more distance with them, and it makes it harder for them to get the proper angle to move through your shield.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I knew about this jump mechanic, but I didn't know about like looking down to like get this angle. That's really interesting.
Yeah. You can, if you want to like actually try it out, just go into a custom game at some point and look at Reinhardt from this side when he's shielding, and you'll see like the distance that he still has from shield's body.
Okay. But you said you put your shield up while you're jumping, right? Like.
Yeah.
Because I always do it the other way around. I shield, and then I jump and I drop it, get the momentum, and as soon as I land, I shield again.
Both can kind of work if you have the timing right. It's just like, as long as you have the momentum, you have like the good shield uptime, it's all fine. One thing to keep in mind though, against some heroes you have to time it in a rhythm. So if you're playing against Reaper, you want to time it to match the rhythm of the shots, preferably. Same thing with McCree, he's also quite a rhythmic gun.
I have a second question.
Yeah, go for it.
So on Shrine, when they were running dive,
yeah,
they were going top left, and you said like against deathball this is tricky because all the damage basically just gets focused where you get out on the top left high ground.
Yeah.
So what do you think are like the preferable ways, for example, for dive, whether you go main or whether you go on this high ground?
So basically, if you're playing dive, you always want to start off through main here, really, with the most of your team, because then you can just see what the enemy team has. Then you want to send at least 1 or 2 people to the elephant statue here, and maybe 1 DPS to the side here. So if you see deathball, the thing is, deathball has like more shielding, right? Like Winston D.Va doesn't have as much shielding, and Reinhardt just has a lot more. So if the like, I can see if I can get it from another angle here. So what Tomahawk did here, and same thing for his team, if your entire dive is set up around like here, they're all gonna drop to here, really, and maybe here. And then the only thing Reinhardt has to do is hold up his shield here or here, and they've blocked all the relevant damage. They can just put their entire team behind themselves, and they have like 3 damage blocked, right? So that means that they can put all the damage they want into you as dive heroes, and you cannot get onto them without having to use all your cooldowns. And then imagine if there's like 4 people having to jump in right now on this target. Everyone just turns around and decimates from red, like the red team will just decimate because they still have all their cooldowns online. So if you took the other approach, where you take multiple angles, it's just a much safer, because if you're, let's say that you're the Reinhardt on point, right? I'm just gonna make up some random heroes that you guys played. Let's say the Doomfist is in main, you have to kind of shield that, but then there's a Sombra on the side, so how do you want to deal with that? In the meantime, the Winston's behind there, and your D.Va's either with the Winston or with the Doomfist. Which one do you want to shield as Reinhardt? Like, he's just forced to make a decision here, and there will always be a drawback to the decision. Whereas if everyone is focusing, if everyone from the blue team, from the dive heroes, is all focusing like the same direction, then I can just put a shield and say like, okay, they're all there, I can just keep them at bay. Whereas if you're split up in this case, like, okay, I might get Doomfist rocket punched, I might get hacked, the D.Va might just focus me, and my healer might just die if Winston gets on him.
Yeah, that's reasonable. So let's say, what if you play dive against dive? Would you then say the preferences changes towards playing this high ground, or would you still say main is like a good option? Main
is generally a good option. I spoke to Tomahawk about it in like a team review, but on King Hill you want to have what's called a rollout, which is a certain strategy that a certain like execution that you always go for. And let's say if you're playing your own dive, right, and you don't know what the enemy team has, if you position like bloop, 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 and then your healer's in the back somewhere, if they're playing dive, that's fine, because you have your own angles already, and you can still like go back to each other with movement abilities if you need to be close, and you can still counter dive for your healers because you're all kind of close. So if you're playing dive, you're kind of have an okay position, and if they're playing a deathball, then you're also still kind of in a fine position, because you can still like dance around them and get all the relevant angles in. Whereas if you're all playing from the same direction as dive, it might work against dive, but it's not going to work against deathball. So having the rollout with split angles here, it just creates it so you have more success in general, like you have a bit more of an effective strategy against multiple compositions, which on King Hill is very important because you can't see their composition until the fight really begins.
Yeah. What if you play deathball? Sorry if I'm
no problem.
All these questions.
If you're playing deathball, I usually, what I did when we played deathball is that we want to like control this elephant statue. So you have like a tiny bit of healing angle onto the backline here. If you have like a one-hit scan maybe, or like an Ana that wants to stay there, or you have health back control. And then once you're like scout the enemy comp, you can fight around point here. Like if they're there playing deathball this way, you start entering the point through here. And if they're playing some sort of dive variation, you might just want to like all rotate a point and try to face them all in one direction.
Okay, interesting.
Right. Any other questions, or is that it?
Not for me.
Alright. Then I think I will now actually stop recording.